guys, this is Bob, BBD, News with Views, more analysis on geostrategic affairs. Here, I'd like to point out, folks, while we've been focused on the great game, as everybody talks about, that's in play in the Pacific and the Indian Ocean, that's this area, right? That's that area, right? There is actually, and this is our basically main offensive defense as far as India is concerned against China. Let's not forget, there is another great game that's in play. And for this, you really need to open the playbook in the 1800s when British Raj was prevalent, colonialism, Britain ruled India. That time, there was actually a fear in Britain that Soviet Russia, communist Russia, was going to make a play for South Asia and the rich Indian subcontinent. In order at that time to kind of create a barrier between the expanding USSR and the subcontinent, Britain basically gave away Tibet on a platter. They figured that was essentially China would act as a deterrent to the expanding Soviet Russia. Right? I guess subsequently, the way the democracies in Britain and the United States played their card, and the way the Soviet Russians basically blew their economy, I guess their dreams were essentially left unfructified. However, at the end of the day, the leopard never changes its spots, right? So Russia is perennially communist, right? And if you remember the 70s and the 80s, it was all about Russia or the ex-Soviet Union, right? Trying to basically deliver communism to the rest of the world. And the battle lines were drawn between the democratic world and communist Russia. Right? At some point of time, there was a break between Russia and China. And the reason why this dream didn't spread further than it could is because as Reagan outspent the Soviet Union, the Soviet Union broke up, and the dream was left fairly unfulfilled. But I think Putin still feels and thinks that the Western world needs to be put in its place, and his system is still the best. Right? But now we have a new play actor, and that's China. China under Xi feels exactly the same way. Right? The only difference between now the USSR and China is now China has the money, folks, and China has a number of these countries around the world that it has in its pockets because of debt diplomacy. The world must take note of that, especially the new incoming Biden administration, where some people are coming out of the woodwork, the regular Democrats like under Obama, who felt that, obviously because of a lot of interest in terms of economic interest that the Democrats have, because half their money comes in from the West Coast, and which is fairly aligned and depends on probably the Chinese market for their profits and their top lines. So there is actually a view in China right at this point of time that things will get better under Biden. I think I think it may be a dream too far for them. But what must be remembered here is that actually there is another great game being played, which was the chapters which were not complete by the ex-USSR are now in play today in this region. So the challenge is that while the United States is pulling out of Afghanistan, it is leaving that in the hands not only of Pakistan as India narrowly focuses, but also in the hands of China and in the hands of Russia, for them to achieve the dream that controlling all of Eurasia through that trans-Eurasian line that China has already developed, and then tying it up with the CPEC to go down. For India, this is a major threat. There are two things we can do. Either we jump into this kitty, just like Russia and China are constantly pushing us to do. But by doing so, we revisit our colonial past. The only difference being, previously, the colonial power was Great Britain. This time, the colonial power will be China. Can we live with that? It's up for you folks to answer as I go after this break to tell you about this interesting article that I've read that puts this play in absolute perspective and is something that our geostrategic people should be looking at. As I had said, there are many changes in play, principally the United States, where you have one authoritarian leader that has left and that's now going to actually be advantage India, even though China thinks China may have a little bit of a space to put their foot into the door. But essentially, I think India is in a much sweeter spot, right? Except for our democratic credentials, which we are going to have to burnish. The second is the Brexit, like I said. The sum of the parts is greater than the whole. And now we have two people in play. We have the United Kingdom, which comes with a huge technical bandwidth, comes with a huge network of Commonwealth countries that can be part of our network, and Europe itself, where again the sum of the parts, as I said yesterday, is greater than the whole. We have to be able to work ourselves. We've already worked ourselves into France. We have to be able to work ourselves into some of the other countries to ensure that China does not take control of Europe and Eurasia dream is left unfructified. Biden will play a huge role in this because even he is not unhappy with the deal that the investment deal that is being negotiated between Germany and China. The rest of the countries are really not happy with that at all, folks. More after the break.
I love Max, but Logistics Limited.
Welcome back, folks. And here's the article I spoke about that I must read out parts of it. It's written by Andrew Koribko, right? It's about, is Pakistan's NCPEC plus vision finally beginning to take shape? Russia, he says, Russian, Chinese and Pakistani interests are all directly served through NCPEC, and N stands for North. What is it? Pakistan's unique geostrategic location at the crossroads of East, South, West and Central Asia enables it to function as the zipper of Eurasia. CPEC enables Pakistan to become the global pivot state, folks. I know India doesn't like to hear that, but this is something written by a Russian fella. So you really have to take cognizance of it. What does he further say? He says, Russian, Chinese and Pakistani interests are all directly served through NCPEC. And this is again important to note. Why do I keep bringing this up? Is because you know that Russia is not an honest broker. It's playing a dubious role, and we in India are going to be collateral damage, right? What do you have says then, right? It says, how do these economies, he says, basically what does Russia hope to achieve? It says Moscow's regional allies can become more internally stable as their economies grow upon securing access to the global markets that this corridor provides through the Indian Ocean, as could Russia's resource-rich Siberian region. Beijing, meanwhile, will see its Pakistani-based CPEC investment put to use as a springboard for transcontinental integration process and could also secure contracts to construct parts of its northern branch expansion as well. As for Islamabad, it would financially benefit by having its ports facilitate Central Asian trade and the wider world. What else? As we go in, it talks about future of what does it do? It's a grand strategic concept for the future of intra-Eurasian relationships in the emerging multipolar world. And what what's multipolar world here, folks, at the end is going to be the communist world or the world as per the ideology and driven by China and Russia and the rest. And we have to decide on which side we want to be, as what he talks about, and this is which is going to hurt us. In fact, continued movement in this direction might even lead to the creation of a new multipolar trilateral. Pakistan, you got it, China and Russia. The creation of a new multipolar trilateral between them to replace the stalled one between Russia, India and China. The end result could be a golden ring rises between them, Iran, Turkey, Azerbaijan in the heartland of Eurasia. And this, folks, is what is critical to understand. And one of the key things about rejecting Trump's veto, US Senate backs defense bill, one of the key things to note here that is important to India, the bill also takes steps to slow or block Mr. Trump's planned drawdown of American troops from Germany and Afghanistan. In fact, I think it should be told to these folks, as there is obviously hope which springs eternal, which is from Yang Yi. He says, hope Biden will end Trump's Cold War. And you had similar thought process by Joseph Nye, which was part of the administration against Obama, that the Cold War is not necessary. Folks, the Cold War is already there. I think people in the United States also must get their blinkers off, just like Trump. It's again back to communism, extreme forms of authoritarianism versus free and democratic world. India must decide its course, knowing this, with absolute national interest in mind. As this Russian great game comes into play with this golden encirclement, which includes Turkey, Azerbaijan, Pakistan, and Iran, India really needs to set up its game and counter, and that's what it's doing. It's going to have to do a lot more in Bangladesh to counter, to keep our eastern side safe, do a lot more to prize away Myanmar. Sri Lanka is going to have to be countered with further enhancement of development and making sure Maldives stays, and Turkey and Iran, that relationship is like oil and water. It ain't going to work if history has any lessons for us. However, we need to be careful. We are countering that by upping our game with Saudi Arabia, where the chief of the army just went, and with Qatar, with the United Arab Emirates. So this is our play, folks. So as we close the year, right, and what is important also when we do the Bangladesh stuff is what I've learned is very heartening is Bangladesh army to take part in Republic Day parade. And the important part of the thing is we've got to keep CAA and NRC under wraps. As the year goes by, what did we have? Hard realities of 2020. China aims to be on top. Trumpism in America, acceptance of Taliban, Middle East equations have changed, as I've said. Russia, China, as I've already said, is bonding. Assertive neighbors, that's the reason why I think squeamishness from Bangladesh is what forced us to kind of cold store the CA and NRC. And there is an aspirational India, and an aspirational India that needs to globalize. So what do we have? Challenges, countering China. High table on the UN and WHO, we've got to need to use that to nail China. Then, friendship with the US, we need to up that. Wooing Europe, critical, as I've said. Euro also is going to be critical. Engaging with the neighbors, especially Myanmar and in the East. Very important, folks. And as we go along, what does Kamal Sibal have to write? He says there can be no status quo ante in going with China, and because of that, the logic of drawing closer to the United States will be driven not only by China's maritime policies in the Indo-Pacific, but in this larger strategic ambition of being the center of international relations. We can't allow that. This will include more defense cooperation, resolution of trade differences, creating resilient global supply chains, promoting blue dot networks and connectivity partnerships to develop clean networks. It will say Russia, as he also rightly counted, has made common cause with China to resist Western hegemony. And that's going to be the important part. And what are the Americans saying? What are they saying is, what he says is, one of the constants in the US-India relationships against all administration has that been India and the United States. We need India for various reasons, says Ashley G. Tellis. And then he says, and many of Biden's priorities, including climate change, will have to have India at the center of the game. There is no relationship today between any two countries that is more important than that of the United States and India. And that is very critical. But while we do that, folks, we got to remember that we've got to further burnish our democratic credentials, and that's what is important. Jai Hind.